Hi, this is Claire from Claire Alexander Music, and I have in the studio today Christian James Hand from the Session on Air. And I'm going to let him tell me his story today of how this was created and where it's all going from here. So, Christian, welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes. When did this idea first come into your head?
I've always been a religious music fan, and I believe that part of the curse and blessing of having Asperger's is that I listen to music in a very fractal way to begin with. Like, I've always been capable as a child to pull instruments out and listen to hi-hats and bass lines and all that. I remember hearing those from a very early age, and my dad sort of encouraging my music fandom. So that was kind of like how I listened. And then when I started playing in bands, obviously you listen when you're playing, you listen in a different way than when you're listening to music. Mm-hmm. And then through random happenstance, I bumped into a bunch of master recordings of songs. And when I was on...
And when was this? Like when you were a teenager? When
no,
you were
I
in
didn't.
College?
No, I didn't. This idea only started like 6 years ago. And so then when I left Sirius, I called a friend of mine who was on the air with a guy by the name of Mark Thompson from the Mark and Brian show, who's like a radio legend. And I said, hey man, I think I do this thing that your station might greatly enjoy. Mm-hmm. So sight unseen, Mark Thompson put me on the air, which was a huge deal. With no idea.
You were on 100.3 The Sound.
Yeah, I started with him in the morning, and I did it once, and then he was like, dude, you got to come back and keep doing this. So then it sort of picked up steam. And then my ex at the time hadn't really heard a lot of the stuff that I was into, and we'd sit there, and then I started playing her bits of songs. And then as our relationship grew, one day we were hanging out, and she was like, you know, what kind of bums me out is that, she was like, I wish we could invite a bunch of our friends to sit in their room and listen to you do this, because I get to hang out with you and have this incredible show done for me every night. And I was like, do you really think people would give a shit? And she was like, yeah, no, I think people would really give a shit. So then another friend of mine invited me out to see a guy do a lecture on the Beatles' White Album. So when I came home, I told my ex at the time, and I was like, I think I could do this. So I had the station basically pay to rent Swing House, which was the place I used to do them at, and I gave tickets away to all the listeners. So I got 150 people into the first one. Flash forward to like myself and my ex sitting in the green room and me just looking at her and being like, what the fuck have I done? Like, now I have to do this?
Did you ever imagine that was going to turn into a paying gig?
No, I didn't even... There was no way to foresee that this show would even exist, because I didn't... You know, there was no way to play the master tracks of these records.
I've watched this develop over time. I remember when you were doing it at the Swing House.
Yep.
I never got to see a Swing House show.
That's unfortunate.
But I saw you do it live at NAMM.
Right.
And then it just happened to be, you know, one of my favorite songs that you were doing. So it
Black
was
Hole
just,
Sun with Michael Beinhorn.
Yes. I noticed that all of a sudden you were going to other cities now.
Yes.
And who was the first person to invite you to do it in another city?
Well, I actually invited myself. So my buddy lives in Dublin, and have been having a particularly rough time of it. And he hit me up and was like, "Hey, man, I think you need to get out of LA and come and spend some time in Dublin." So I hit him up and I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely come there, but is there a place where I can do the show? And he was like, yeah, we could probably find one Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Mm-hmm. He was like, people are never going to show up, because he assumed that it would be the same show each time. I'm like, it's not. It's different songs, different. So trying to explain it is, as I just said, very difficult. Mm-hmm. So the first one was like 20 people in this tiny little basement venue at a pub, and I rented a TV, and they had a PA already. And then the Saturday night, we did it at this place called the Sugar Club, which is this great venue, but my friend is a genius, so he invited all of his friends to their birthday party / engagement party, but I was the entertainment.
Oh.
It's pretty smart. So
yeah.
I put like 100 of his friends into this place, and then I proceeded to do, the Thursday night I did Queen, David Bowie, and Black Hole Sun. And then Saturday night I did the Beatles versus the Rolling Stones. Because it isn't a show that you've ever seen before, there is actually a learning curve. So by the time I got to the Beatles, it was off to the fucking races. But that first Rolling Stones one, plus people didn't realize that it's a show, so it starts at 8, so there were people walking in at like 8:20, and then that's fucking distracting. And as I said, like, because it's made up on the spot, when I get distracted, it sends my brain off and I can't get back onto it. So that was tough, but the Beatles part of it was epic, because you can't really fuck with the Beatles.
So you've done Dublin, and you've done
Atlanta.
Cleveland.
Yeah,
right?
I did Cleveland, and then I just did San Francisco, which went really, really well.
Now, when I saw you did it, Nam, of course, you were on a stage with a table, and I know also that you went to a school.
Yes.
And you did it like on a huge monster screen.
Yeah, that was sick.
Was that one of your favorite times?
The Rio Hondo was so good because I had a movie-sized screen behind me that had the Beatles session on it.
Fast forward just a little bit to how you got hooked up on the KLOS morning show.
I did that myself.
And look who's here. It's Monday. It's 9 o'clock. Christian has joined us once again.
Morning, everybody.
My first meeting, he was like, all right, you can't come to the station because if anybody sees you walk in the halls, they're going to know that something's up, so we should go and meet at this restaurant. And we went to meet at this like fucking rib spot that was by the old KLOS studios.
Did you have to wear dark glasses?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, and I just watched House of Cards, which has the rib spot in it that's run by that old black dude with a really deep voice, and I just had this feeling that it was like so fucking Cloak and Dagger and like John le Carre that I was like, man, I can't believe... Like, I'm kind of stoked about this because this is exactly the sort of radio legend shit that I would want to be involved in, but I don't think anybody actually gives a fuck if Christian James Hand comes over from the sound to KLOS. But actually they did. As my dad once told me, and I'll never forget, it's easier to get a job when you've got one.
I know.
So, that's what I did.
Yes.
Thanks, Dad.
I listened to you on the radio, and
Sorry.
You sound like you're having a great time.
Yeah, I'm really good at it.
You are good at it.
I mean, I'm good at making it sound like we're having a great time. Thank you. Radio is my number one passion. It is such a powerful medium. It's such a beautiful medium. It's the only one left where you are existing in a space with your audience at the same time. The problem is that once Howard Stern became huge in America, every fucking DJ wanted to be Howard Stern.
Right.
And nobody wanted to do it for the music anymore. They wanted to do it for themselves. So once you want to do it for yourself, and once the fucking playlist is so tight that you can't play the music that you're passionate about, all of a sudden, the reason for a listener to check in should be to hang out with their buddy. That's what radio is supposed to be. You hang out with your friend who plays the music that you enjoy, and when he plays a song you don't like, you don't give a fuck. You sit in with him because when he comes back, he's going to tell you a really cool story, or you're going to find something out.
Well, one of the reasons also that I wanted you to tell me your story is because one of the things that I've realized being in the industry as long as I've been in the industry as well is how much has changed. But what is so interesting to me is the ways that people have reinvented themselves to stay in it. So it's not like the old days where you'd go get a job at a record label and then you'd be there for 20 years.
I am a solo artist at this point who now is the grand cliche of the dude that lives for the 2 hours. So to be able to actually make a living off of authentically being yourself, and on top of that being able to hold 2 fingers up to anyone who's stepping in to try and change it is a huge place to find yourself. Like, it's so fucking punk rock. Like, I couldn't be more content about it.
But you know, Christian, as much as you like to wave the flag of how much of a punk rock you are, I know that you have a huge heart, and I've seen it, and I've seen other things that you do.
Don't tell anybody.
No, come on, like that post yesterday for the
kids.
headphones that you bought for the autistic kids. And
such a great day.
And the card that they sent you back.
I know, how sick is that fucking card? He made like the headphones out of the wire cleaners or whatever. It's so good.
To me, it's not just, being yourself on stage, but being yourself on stage and then being able to have time, because you don't have to work every single day, to go and find places like that you can be of service and give back to the community. And I think that that's great. And you do a lot of that and you don't realize it, but I see it. Because I'm watching you. I got my eyes on you.
All right.
But anyway, I thank you so much for coming
You're welcome.
and telling me your story. I think we'll just leave it at that because we don't really know where it's going. We just know that it's
We
going.
don't. It might be a TV show.
And there might be a TV show.
Might be a TV
and if
show.
there is a TV show, maybe you'll let me talk to you about that when that time
I would
comes.
love that.
You know?
Because that means I'll be doing a TV show, which will make my life even more miserable than it is now. Because I won't be able to hide from anyone. Everyone will know what I look like.
What a
We'll
gift.
take it. Peace and
Anyway,
love.
it was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
TheSessionOnAir.com. That's the best way to find any answers.